There's like another jack inside of it. Yeah, for USB, right?
I can have as well.
We do need to, yeah. Over by Chris.
All right, and welcome to the NASA Spaceflight livestream covering the launch of the Antares rocket with the Cygnus NG-13 mission from the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport in Virginia. I'm Chris Gebhardt, Assistant Managing Editor of NASA Spaceflight. I am in Florida, but Das is live at Wallops Flight Center in Virginia covering the launch for us. He's finishing up getting a few things finished up on his end, but welcome to the live stream. If you have any questions about today's launch of the Antares rocket, about Antares itself, about Cygnus, about the NG-13 mission to the station, please let us know. Throw that up in the chat here on our YouTube channel, and Das and I will go ahead and get it answered for you. While Das finishes up on this end, and Das, whenever you're ready, just go ahead and let me know. But while Das is finishing up on his end, let's go ahead and talk about the double header that is going on today, because this is the first of our two launches from the east coast of the United States here within 5 hours and 24 minutes of each other. Antares is set to launch at 17:39 and 30 seconds Eastern Time here in the United States, followed by the Atlas V rocket with the European Space Agency Solar Orbiter mission from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station at 11:03 p.m. or 23:03 Eastern here today. It's the first time in a really, really long time that we have had two orbital launches from the east coast of the U.S. at the same time. And the Virginia range and the Eastern range here in Florida had to work together to make sure that these two missions could launch so quickly, or so close to one another. And part of the reason this was made possible is because the Atlas is going east-southeast from Florida at 23:03 Eastern Time today, and Antares is also going southeast from the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport in Virginia. Antares uses communication dishes both at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, where it launches from, and the Bermuda Tracking Station in Bermuda. And the Atlas V, because of its east-southeast trajectory, does not need the Bermuda Tracking Station today. So that cleared up the major conflict and constraint between the two for Antares and Cygnus, launching from Virginia. And the Eastern range here in Florida actually has to turn off some of its communication dishes that are used to send the destruct commands to the Atlas V rocket should it encounter a problem after liftoff. And they actually have to turn off those dishes and those communication frequencies so that they do not interfere with Antares' ability to communicate with the Bermuda Tracking Station. So the Eastern Range actually moved some of those checkouts earlier than they would normally do them, and has now shut down all of those assets here at Cape Canaveral to allow Antares to launch. And once Antares launches, they will turn those back on and re-verify all the connections with the Atlas rocket itself. And that's a great way that the two ranges worked together here to bring us this double header off the east coast of the U.S. Veronica Ramandani, thank you so much for the super chat. We super appreciate it. And also 569 Trent, thank you for the super chat as well. We really appreciate it. You know, we bring you all of this because it's our passion, because we love it, and we super appreciate the support on our end as well.
Hey Chris,
So
I think I'm good to go. Can you hear me right now?
Yeah, Das, how's it going down there, or up there rather, from me?
Not too bad. Is my audio being piped over to YouTube as well right now? Can y'all hear me on YouTube?
Yeah, just hop on.
All right. So I was listening to the intro there. Thanks for the extra time, Chris. I think we're all ready to go. Do y'all have my camera acquired on YouTube as well? All right, so I'm listening to the studio here. Thanks to the studio. I'm over here at the NASA Wallops press site right now, and I've set up a little bit back. You see some people in front of me. About 2.3 miles away is the Antares rocket. So let's see if we can't get a little bit closer to the Antares rocket there. Right there, out at pad 0A. Are we getting that on the stream?
And LCGNC1 confirms.
All right, cool. And Chris, you can answer me in real time, I think, because I think we should be able to hear both of us on the stream at the same time, right?
Indeed.
LCS1 ground to vehicle comm is nominal.
I'm not getting Chris's audio here right now. Is anybody else getting Chris? Okay.
Yeah,
all right, I cannot hear
everything's
Chris.
good.
Oh, there he is. I hear Chris now. Okay, good. So we're out here ready to cover the launch. Chris, did you want to talk about the launch? What's going on while I continue to plug some stuff in now that we got the real camera feed going?
Sure. So, yeah, so in addition to all the assets that the two ranges had to work together to ensure were functioning properly and that they wouldn't interfere with one another, you know, these are actually two NASA missions going on the same day within just 5.5 hours of each other. This is a NASA contracted commercial resupply mission to the International Space Station with the Antares 230 rocket, which will deliver the Cygnus NG-13 spacecraft into orbit to chase down the International Space Station ahead of rendezvous and capture and berthing with the International Space Station on Tuesday morning. An interesting thing about this mission, it could actually rendezvous in just 1.3 days from phasing requirements with the station, but that would actually place the spacecraft as arriving during a crew sleep period. So Cygnus actually has to wait a little bit behind the International Space Station to allow the crew time to wake up on Tuesday morning and start their day before it pushes in for grappling by the U.S. crew on the U.S. side of the station, and then berthing to the Node 2 or Harmony module on the International Space Station. So overall, this is the 13th resupply flight of a Northrop Grumman under the commercial resupply services contracts with NASA. It is their second one under the CRS-2 round of contracts. Their first one was just 3 months ago in early November, again on an Antares rocket that launched from the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport here in Virginia, just like this one will. And this is also the second flight of the newly uprated Antares 230 Plus rocket. So the Antares 230 has been flying for a few years, ever since the unfortunate loss of the third Cygnus mission due to a rocket engine failure very close to the ground after liftoff. They switched over from the previous engines that they were using to the Russian-made RD-181 engine, and that flew as the Antares 230 variant. And then they actually lightened up the Antares. They took some things out of it that weren't needed, and they fortified it in other places. And the 230 Plus variant is actually kind of unique in rocketry in that it does not throttle its engine down as it goes through max Q, the period of maximum aerodynamic pressure and mechanical stress on the rocket. And that actually gives them the ability to take about 700 pounds of additional cargo to the International Space Station just by not throttling those engines back at max Q. So a huge performance increase for Antares and Cygnus. The Cygnus spacecraft also had some upgrades. Customers and payload customers can now communicate with their science experiments while Antares is en route to the station and after it departs the station as part of the CRS-2 contract. And the other major change was the ability to do late load payloads installation to Cygnus at the launch pad just 24 hours before its liftoff. That has now been demonstrated on 3 Antares missions, with this one being the third. So right now we're about 54 minutes, just over 54 minutes away from the anticipated launch time here. And fueling operations are underway for the Antares first stage. They are in high flow for RP1 kerosene into the first stage, and they are also loading the liquid oxygen into the stage at this point. They do not actually have to fuel the second stage because the second stage is all solid propellant. So that was placed into the stage all the way back in Utah, where the stage was built and produced before it was shipped out to Wallops in the middle of last year for this anticipated launch. So all in all, it's an exciting mission. Cygnus is bringing a lot of good scientific experiments up to the space station, as well as some crew supplies and overall station equipment. And if we have a launch today, what's really exciting for me down here in Florida, prepping for the Atlas mission, is that about an hour and a half after Antares launches, the International Space Station and Cygnus will make a visible pass over Florida. So the team down here covering the Atlas mission is hoping to see the station, and then about 20 minutes later see Cygnus chasing it down just after liftoff. So we're kind of excited about that, although the team isn't super excited right now. They're all in sleep mode, preparing for our long night down here. But Das, if you're ready, like you've been at Wallops for the last 2 days. What's the experience been like? What's the feeling like there on the ground? Because I also see actually on screen right now we actually have the Antares to the left of that water tower, and the black little structure to the right of that water tower is the Rocket Lab Electron strung back. So that's
I put it right in the middle of the screen for you, Chris.
Yeah, perfect. So like that's where Rocket Lab is building their second pad, and they plan to start launching from Wallops within the next few months. But you can see how close they are and some of the assets that they share with one another. It's really impressive that those two pads are as close to each other as they are. But Das, why don't you take it away for a little while, and tell us about your perspective and what you're seeing and what the feeling's like there on the ground.
Yeah, for sure. So normally whenever we're badged as press to go out and cover a launch, we get this at Cape Canaveral all the time. People are like, oh, turn the camera and look at this other pad. We're here covering something on 41, and they want us to turn and look at pad 40 or 39A or something. And typically when we're badged for one flight. We have permission to look at one thing, this one pad with this one rocket, and we don't go out there and look at other assets on base. Well, I can't really film Antares without also getting the Rocket Lab pad in the shot. So the sort of running joke, we were standing right next to the rocket. I was just outside the fence, maybe 100 feet away from the base of Antares whenever it was horizontal yesterday. And I literally could not film the Antares pad 0A without also getting parts of the Rocket Lab pad in. That's how close together they are. It almost looks like they share concrete. They're so close. So I thought that was an interesting sort of little bit different thing. Somebody asked me, oh, we'll turn and look at this other thing at Wallops, and I'm like, well, no, I'm not going to film anything other than what I'm here for, but I literally could not get the Antares on the camera without having a little bit of Rocket Lab in there too. I wonder if that was like a marketing thing on purpose. They're like, oh, I'm gonna put my sign right here next to the main pad. But we've got Antares over there, the parts of the pad. If you saw our live streams yesterday, we actually spent a couple hours hanging out, just like Chris was doing at the remote setups for Solar Orbiter earlier. We were over at the Antares pad looking at different parts of the pad, seeing the flame trench, the deluge systems, how it brings water out of the water tower and sort of fills the flame trench with these nozzles. Antares was horizontal at the time, so we got great views yesterday of the late load mobile clean room. The mobile clean room looks like one of those snack trucks at the airport, where it drives over and then it has a scissor lift box on the back that loads up and raises up and then connects to the little door you don't go in on the airplane, and they put all your snacks and drinks on, right? The mobile clean room for Antares looks a lot like that, where it's a big trucks looking thing and it drives over, and this clean room actually raises up on scissor lift sort of thing, and they seal the top of the mobile, or the front of the mobile clean room, to the top of the Antares fairing, and they pop the top on the fairing, the payload fairing, they open it up, and they can actually get access to the inside of Antares less than 24 hours in advance. So the late load is something that they use whenever they're doing they have live animals for experiments on board. They have food or something that needs to be loaded into the rocket that can't sit there for a week or two, right? So Antares late load with the mobile clean room is really cool. They don't have to move the rocket. The rocket is just horizontal on the pad, and then they drive the clean room to the rocket instead of driving the rocket to the clean room.
And
so
Das, we've
that's a
actually
really
got
cool,
a picture of that right now on the live stream for people to see what
nice.
you're talking about there. Yeah.
Excellent. So that's what you can see. We've got this new technology we're working on where we can pipe pictures in real time as well. So that should be what the mobile clean room looks like. And we streamed from there yesterday, just sort of hanging out, answering questions. So the other thing about Wallops, Chris, that I think doesn't really match with Florida is that it's cold. I'm cold.
LCOps 1, orbit nav position.
And launch team, we're currently
It's like 45 degrees. It gets down to like 35 degrees at night. I was over near the Wallops ferry landing, the public viewing area earlier, and it was mid-40s, and I got my jacket on and stuff, but you stand out here and your hands start to get a little bit too cold to use the touch screens and stuff. But, I don't know how, I guess I do know how you pulled the Florida launch. You live there, right? So I think in the future, the Florida launches, was it warm in Florida for Solar Orbiter so far?
Yeah, it's in the, it's comfortable here, I would say. It was in the low 70s today. It's going to be about 68 degrees at liftoff time tonight. So, it's very comfortable, which we're grateful for, because normally we're sweltering in the middle of summer in 97-degree weather and 100% humidity. So we take these nice winter, in quotes, launches from Florida when we can.
It's definitely a lot more. It's nice without the mosquitoes. When it's cold enough so that we don't get a bunch of mosquitoes, that's sort of a nice thing.
And there's another synergy between these two missions, Das, that we don't normally get to talk about, and that's the engine that the first stages of these two rockets use.
Right.
Because the Antares, which we're looking at right now, uses the RD-181, a Russian-built engine, and the Atlas V uses the RD-180 Russian-built engine as its first stage. So there's even some good international synergy going on here as Antares launches to the International Space Station with a Russian rocket and American rocket propulsion, and a whole host of experiments for the US side of the space station, and then the Atlas V launching the European Space Agency's Solar Orbiter mission on a NASA-procured rocket from a US rocket company that uses US rocket engines and Russian engines. So some awesome international cooperation here on these missions as well.
What's the difference between the 180 and the 181? Is the number of combustion chambers, or?
Yeah, so they are both single-engine, dual-chamber rockets. So you see two engine nozzles down at the base of them, right? But they're not actually two different. But they're not actually two different engines per se.
Right.
They're the same. They're the same. So the RD-181. Let's talk about that one first, because that's the one that's used on Antares. Right. The basic spec of it uses liquid oxygen and RP1 kerosene, and it has a sea level thrust of 432 pounds of force. That increases to 470,000 pounds as the rocket ascends into the upper atmosphere. And the RD-180 that will be used by the Atlas later on today also uses liquid oxygen and RP1 kerosene, but it has a much greater thrust. It has a sea level thrust of 860,000 pounds force and 930,000 pounds force as it ascends in the vacuum. So the main difference is the amount of thrust that you get out of the back end of that engine as it launches, and that just goes to show you how different these two rockets are, right? Antares looks really big on the pad compared to the Rocket Lab little, the Rocket Lab strong back there, but it would be dwarfed by the Atlas V rocket, and the rockets just need different types of thrust, and that's what the two engines do.
It looks like we're starting to get a little bit of venting there. If you can see about halfway down the rocket, we're getting a little bit of venting. It's not a big plume, and I guess that's because of the temperature out here, but I do see a little bit of venting if y'all can see it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that goes hand in hand with the loading of the cryogenic liquid oxygen. That's what you're seeing boiling off there. The sort of white vapors are when the liquid oxygen boils off. They vent out that gaseous oxygen, and that's that white cloud. that you see there, which is perfectly normal as we're at 44.5 minutes to launch at this point. For the Antares rocket. And Das, it should be an incredibly gorgeous launch 5 minutes after sunset. And are the skies really clear? Like, do you think you're going to get to see a lot of it as it goes up?
I say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I'm broadcasting at 30 FPS. So there's the sky, Chris, right there. That's what we got. We got some haze on the far horizon, some high-level clouds way out there, but right now, don't want to jinx it. Over the pad, it's nice and clear. It's beautiful out here.
green on toxics and debris.
Very, very, very nice. And for some of you who are asking on the stream, who are watching, and thank you so much to the 1,500 of you that are watching from around the world. I know I saw Germany and Peru. And Australia in there. Let us know where you're watching from around the world. We love that, as Das focuses on the American bald eagle. They're flying over Wallops. But I know a lot of people were asking. Launch is actually scheduled for 17, 39, and 30 seconds, and that 30 seconds is very important. That's the opening of our launch window and the exact second that Antares can launch and get Cygnus into the right point in space and in orbit to chase down the International Space Station for a rendezvous on Tuesday. So that's why we time these things down to the absolute second for these launches that have to rendezvous with the space station. I'm seeing the United Kingdom, Virginia, Missouri, Huntsville, Alabama. Someone's watching from the Ukraine, Scotland, Canada, Mexico, Germany, Argentina. Hello to all of you from around the world. We hope you and our boss, the managing editor, Chris Bergen, saying he's from the People's Republic of Yorkshire, there in the United Kingdom. But we hope you're enjoying this for Antares. We hope you'll join us again later tonight for Atlas. But Das, what are they saying there over the net? It's a little hard for me to hear over the earphone I've gotten listening to that.
I did not copy that, what they just said. They just made some sort of LaunchNet announcement behind me, but I did not hear what they said.
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, so it's but it's shaping up to be a really good event. Like, how did the tours go yesterday, Das?
The tours, we went over to the HIF. I actually did a little stand-up when you were doing the Solar Orbiter rollout. I was over at the HIF, but because the HIF actually has NG-14 in it, with that 38,000 or 58,000 pound Castor 30 XL SRB second stage, we are not allowed to take anything that transmits into the HIF. And we're talking like can't take a cell phone, can't take a smartwatch even, anything that has a transmitter on it. Key fobs. They say not to even take key fobs in. So we could not bring a live stream camera, which of course requires transmitters, into the HIF. So I was just outside yesterday and we got some NASA logo in the background. After that, we came over to the visitor center. Wallops has a really cool public viewing area at the Wallops Visitor Center, and we just did a little bit of hanging out outside there. That's about 7.3 miles away from the rocket. If you're a public person, like just anybody who wants to come publicly and see the Antares launch from the Wallops Visitor Center. And then a little bit earlier today, I went over to the Wallops Ferry Landing, and I checked out the Wallops Ferry Landing, which is another public viewing site that you can see from. That position is only 2.2 miles away from the pad, about the same distance that we are right now at the actual press site. We also did the pad hangout, so while they were doing the remote camera setups, the fantastic public affairs crew here at Wallops let us do our live stream the entire time they were setting up remote cameras. So that was, we got a little bit of time on the north side of the rocket, which would be the left side of the rocket in this view, and a little bit of time on the south side of the rocket, the other side. The north side was great. You can sort of see Antares. It was horizontal at the time, so it wasn't as cool as the rocket being vertical. But when we were on the south side, on the right-hand side here, it was hard to see the Antares pad because the Rocket Lab pad was in every shot, like I was mentioning earlier. So that was a different thing for me. It's not my first trip to Antares. I've been coming out here since I think it was 08 was the first one that I came to. But it was the first time that I had been here since they had the Rocket Lab pad there, and I was actually quite surprised they were so close together. So anyways, we continue to see a little bit of that venting there, and I took control of the camera for a second because there's no one here to stop
me. Actually,
and I got the bald eagle flying. Go ahead.
Yeah, and actually, because you just mentioned the camera and taking manual control, Darium Hernandez wanted to know what type of camera you're using out there.
So the view that you're looking at right now is coming off of a Canon XA11. So it's not a DSLR or anything like that. It's a little run-and-gun semi, what is it, prosumer version. But it's not a $10,000 camera. It's a camera that we can afford for these live streams.
And we are now on open loop. Time is 22:00:35.
All right, we'll try that. It's a little bit difficult
and,
here.
Ops 2,
Just one
LC,
second.
Countdown 1. Go ahead.
We're listening to the ComNet.
Actually, standby 1. Let me just let the team know that I can verify we have nominal open loop in the MCC here. We'll go ahead and check step 349 complete. Yeah, Ops 2, if I can get you to go to the pre-burner low temperature abatement checklist. It should be page 210 in your checklist.
Copy that. Ops 2 is ready.
And in Ops 2, we're going to go ahead and perform step Juliet 2. It's energizing the ME2 VPG EPV. And then we're going to hold that to get further direction, and that will come from MES1 directly. How copy?
All copy. Would you like me to go ahead and do that on your mark?
Yeah, your go for that on your mark.
Copy.
Yeah, we can get a little police escort.
Are y'all getting the bird noises on the stream here? I know we were listening to the ComNet there, but...
VPG on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. ME2 VPG activated.
And I copy that, Ops 2.
Okay, yeah. Wow, I just all of a sudden all those birds took off at the same time, and you could definitely hear them. So again, a lot like
we're all watching the stream.
Go
here
ahead.
And we're like, oh man, apocalyptic birds.
apocalyptic birds.
But there's
So,
actually a great question here, Das, that we have from Hendrik, who wanted to know if there have been any orders from NASA of Cygnus flights on the Atlas V or the Vulcan, and if Vulcan is even certified to launch them. So it doesn't sound like the countdown nets are active right now. So figured that would be a good question to answer. That Cygnus has launched twice on an Atlas V so far. As part of the previous contract, but for the CRS-2 round of contracts that we're in now for Northrop Grumman, NASA has actually given authorization to proceed to all 6 of those contracted flights. This is the second one of those, and all of them are on an Antares 230 rocket. NASA does not have any desire right now to pack Cygnus with so much cargo that it would need the Atlas V instead of the Antares to get itself to orbit. And there is no current plan right now to fly Cygnus on a Vulcan rocket. And mainly that's because Vulcan and Atlas V will continue to overlap for multiple years after Vulcan comes online. There's really no need right now to go through the process of switching that over, but it would be a fairly simplistic process to switch over Cygnus to Vulcan if it were needed later on in the life of the space station. And then also we've got multiple questions about lightning towers. Those 4 towers that you see.
Countdown 1 with status update. We
got some launch net here coming, Chris.
From the range on toxic
Status update.
debris, and they are green for launch at this time. I want to kick off step 350. Ops 1, enable your local launch enable button at the failsafe panel and verify local indicators illuminated.
LC Ops 1, launch enabled and illuminated.
And GSO, enable your local launch enable button at the failsafe panel and verify local indicators illuminated.
GSO, verified launch enabled and illuminated.
Roger that. This time I want to verify RCC enable abort buttons are enabled and illuminated. PM. PM's enabled. RSO. RSO's enabled. FSO. FSO enabled. TD. TD enabled. And we'll go ahead and check step 352 complete.
LC Ops 1, Master Global Launch Enabled Verified.
Roger that, Ops 1. LC Elect 1, Launch Enabled Verified. Roger, Elect 1. Ops 1, we'll go ahead and check 353 and 354. And Ops 1, step 355, you can stop sending ECU commands.
LC Ops 1, ECU commands halted.
Copy, Ops 1, we'll check 355 complete.
So as we continue on there, I can hear the countdown notes perfectly now. So yeah, as we continue down 33 minutes until our anticipated launch at 17:39 and 30 seconds Eastern time. Here we do have some questions about those 4 poles around the Antares rocket on the pad. Those are the lightning protection towers. So just like here in Florida, where you need to channel any electrical energy from a lightning strike, making sure it wouldn't hit a rocket that's on the pad, Virginia has the same types of considerations. So those are the lightning protection towers that you are seeing, so that if an electrical storm were to come through, the lightning would strike one of those poles instead of the Antares rocket on the launch pad. So that's why those are so vital and protected, because even if a rocket is not fueled, a lightning strike to it could do significant damage to the payload inside and to the electrical systems and communication systems on the rocket as well. So that's why we need those there. And we also had a question a little further up about why does Cygnus need a payload fairing inside of Antares, and the reason for that is Cygnus is a very blunt vehicle. It is not a tapered nose. It's a very blunt, flat surface, so it needs that payload fairing to create a smooth aerodynamic flow around the Antares as it ascends through the lower atmosphere. And then once first stage flight is done and we're up out of the atmosphere, we don't need that payload fairing anymore. So after first stage separation, that payload fairing is jettisoned, and then a few seconds later, the second stage ignites to take Cygnus on its way to orbit. And that second stage is, of course, the solid propellant Castor 30 XL stage that you were talking about, having seen the one for the next flight already in the horizontal integration facility there at Wallops. So as we
Chris, over on this end, I'm working on a couple different little issues here to make sure the bitrate stays stable. So I'm just letting you answer some questions for now.
Gotcha. I'll keep going then.
Thank you.
So let's talk about that second stage, because normally, right, if rockets are going to use solid propulsion, they use that on the first stage, right, in the dense lower atmosphere to get you up out of the atmosphere very quickly. But Antares is very unique in that it uses a liquid-fueled first stage and then a solid propellant second stage. And the second stage, and there's a great picture of it right there, the second stage has to do a very precise orbit insertion, and that's a lot easier to do with a liquid-fueled rocket than it is with a solid propellant rocket. But the way Northrop Grumman has designed the guidance systems and the navigation systems on Antares, and specifically the Castor 30 XL upper stage, it actually performs a series of S-turn maneuvers during second stage flight to actually reduce its overall efficiency, to make sure that it's hitting the orbital target perfectly, to drop Cygnus off into a 283 by 203 kilometer orbit, which is the initial transfer orbit that it needs in order to rendezvous with the International Space Station. So this is a great example of a rocket that actually sacrifices its overall efficiency and performance capability to insert a payload into the orbit that's necessary for the payload, instead of just going all out and doing...
Countdown 1, we're currently 30 minutes from T0. And at this time, I want to pull for final FTS power on and arm command test. Safety?
Safety is go.
FSO? FSO go. Ops 1?
Ops 1 is go.
Elect 2? Elect 2 is go. We'll go for final FTS power on and arm command test. Check 356 FSO. Step 357, bring up CT with check channel on. FSO and work.
So real quick, what they're doing there is they're activating the flight termination system on the Antares rocket and taking it through all of its checkouts to make sure that in the unlikely event that there's a failure of the Antares rocket, that they can destroy it to protect land, sea, and air assets. And that's what you're hearing right now, or what you were hearing them work through. And again, live, you can see the gaseous oxygen venting out of the top of this first stage. If all goes to plan, the Cygnus will launch today on Sunday and rendezvous Tuesday morning with the International Space Station for grapple and berthing to Node 2 Harmony on board the station.
LC WFF CT site on, check channel radiate. Copy. FSO Ops 1 step 358, apply external power to FTSA and FTSB.
LC Ops 1, FTSA external power on, FTSB external power on.
So Genda Minoru wanted to know how much...
External power nominal. Copy. Elect 1, step 36, Elect 2, I'll wait for your call on 360. LC, Elect 2, FTS is safe, configuration verified, check channel being received, and AGCs are nominal. Roger, Elect 2, we'll check 360 complete. Ops 1, step 361, transfer FTSA and FTSB to internal power.
LC Ops 1, FTSA and B internal power on. FTSA external power off. FTSB external power off. IRIG is 221142.
And FTS internal power nominal. And I copy all. FSO, send FTS receiver arm for 2 seconds, then remove. Continue check channel when function removed. FSO, arm on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. +1, +2, arm removed. Check channel continued. LC, Elect 2, FTS arm indication received. FTS currently indicates safe. And FSO, verify FTS arm indication. FTS arm indication. And copy all. We'll check 364 and 365.
So as they continue working through...
LC, Elect 2, FTS safe in arms and FTLU safe. Copy, Elect 2, check 366.
Yeah, so as they continue working through those, this is all pretty standard. One thing that's great about Northrop Grumman launches is the launch net is very talkative, unlike SpaceX launches where the net is very quiet. And we want a talkative net and countdown loop for Northrop Grumman missions, just like we want a very quiet loop for SpaceX missions. So this is really cool to be able to bring you this and let all of you hear what we're always privy to and listening to these countdown nets. But as they keep going through that, Genda wanted to know how much payload is sacrificed by these S-turns that the second stage does to insert Cygnus into its proper orbit. In this particular case, no payload is actually no payload upmass is actually sacrificed because it's all sort of built into how Antares flies the Cygnus. And Antares was designed primarily to fly Cygnus up to orbit, so it's really a rocket that's tailored to it. But there isn't really like a payload figure that we can give you that's sacrificed by those S-turns because it's all based on mission specifics. That's why some Cygnus flights can be a lot heavier than others as launched on Antares. It just a lighter payload mass means more S-turn and performance sacrifice, and a heavier payload means less S-turns and a greater overall performance of the Antares rocket. And since we're talking about Stage 2 here, Hendrik also wanted to know how long it will take Stage 2 to decay and re-enter. From a 286 by 203 kilometer orbit, it'll take about 3 to 4 weeks for the second stage to re-enter naturally through atmospheric drag and orbital decay. So late February, early March is when the second stage will decay and re-enter under a normal mission profile. And yes, and I see some questions in here about Antares' overall cost. The Antares rocket costs between $80 and
The sun's
$84
just
million
about down,
per launch.
Chris,
so
I
it
am
is
not
slightly more
hearing you. I'm
expensive
trying
than a
to
SpaceX
fix an
Falcon
issue
9,
with
but it is less expensive than the
audio.
United Launch
I
Alliance
can't hear
Atlas
anything
V
you're
rocket.
saying now.
It is a fully expendable
But I think
rocket,
it's on
though,
my end.
but an $80 million price tag out of the gate is a really good price point for this particular rocket and the technology that it uses. So here we're about 24 minutes away from launch. Das, how's it looking over there? Are you still troubleshooting? Should I keep some more questions or?
Countdown 1.
LC Prop 2.
Step 367, place OC.
So it looks like we've had a little bit of a communication dropout there from Das, but the image is still live. So we're just going to keep going here. So yeah, if you've got any more questions, if you got questions, keep throwing them up in the chat here on YouTube. They can be questions about the Antares rocket, about Northrop Grumman, about the space station, about NASA, about commercial resupply, and anything to do particularly with this launch as we head toward our anticipated liftoff time of 17:39 and 30 seconds Eastern Time, which is 22:39 and 30 seconds UTC, if you know your time zone conversion better with UTC than Eastern Time here in the United States.
Prop 2, you go to resume HSS
So if you're just joining us, I'm Chris Gebhardt. I'm the assistant managing editor of NASASpaceflight. My colleague Das Valdaz is on the ground live at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, bringing you this view right now live of the Antares rocket on the launch pad, 23 minutes on the mark and counting until the liftoff of the NG-13 resupply mission to the International Space Station. Cygnus is bringing about 3,000...
Copy that. We'll check 372 complete. And Ops 1, LC, countdown 1, step 373. Enable the ME1 and ME2 TVC and EHA buses.
LC Ops 1 in work.
Yes.
LC Ops 1, TVC and EHA buses enabled.
Copy that.
Yes, as we are about 22 minutes away from launch now, what you're looking at is the Antares rocket getting fueled up for its launch to the International Space Station.
Rapid retract. In work.
It should be an absolutely gorgeous launch about 5 minutes after sunset at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport there in Virginia. You can hear them, what they were saying there is they've prepared the transporter, erector, and launcher, basically the strong back for its rapid retract at liftoff. That tower will pull back and pull away from Antares, and Antares will actually perform a little swivel and wiggle as it comes off the pad called the Baumgartner maneuver to get itself away from the transporter
Countdown 1 at this time.
erector.
Get a report of readiness for recal of engine pressure sensors. MES1.
MES1 is go.
EHS1.
EHS1 is go.
All right, we're ready for engine pressure sensor recal. Ops 1, step 377. Recalibrate engine pressure sensors.
LC Ops 1 in work.
Okay, so as we continue on with our content, we've got a couple other questions here. So Charles Wallace wanted to know, can the second stage be throttled, stopped, or restarted? On the Antares rocket, the answer to that is no. The Antares second stage is a solid propellant stage, and once you ignite a solid rocket motor, you cannot turn it off. And you cannot, on the fly, command it to throttle down or throttle up. The throttling of a solid rocket is carried out by how they actually pour the propellant into the stage. And you can do different designs like a circle, a star, different divots and caveats in the solid propellant to reduce or increase the amount of thrust. But all of that has to be very specifically calculated ahead of time, knowing the burn rate of that solid propellant, so you know exactly when in flight that solid rocket is going to throttle down, and you cannot restart it. Once it burns out, once you start it, that's it. It burns all of its propellant in one go, and then it's done. So that's why this particular stage has to do those S-turn maneuvers to actually sacrifice some of its efficiency to get Cygnus into space.
In work, LC.
All right, copy that. I'll wait for your report out when that's complete.
Copy. And I'm also seeing a question in here about why doesn't Cygnus launch? Why doesn't Cygnus launch on a SpaceX Falcon 9 vehicle? And the answer to that is because as part of the commercial resupply services contract, NASA wanted more than one rocket, more than one launch provider for redundancy, so that if one system went down, the other could continue to launch.
Tell on countdown. Go tell.
So in this case,
yeah, tell us.
and we actually saw that when Antares suffered its launch failure back in 2000, back a few years ago, on its third flight to the International Space Station. SpaceX was able to keep launching after that, and then when SpaceX had their launch failure on CRS-17 in 2000, or on CRS-7 in 2015, Cygnus was able to keep launching as Dragon. SpaceX was standing down. So they complement each other very well, and that type of redundancy is something that NASA has taken forward into the Commercial Crew Program, with both SpaceX and Boeing as providers, and the two crew vehicles launching on two different rockets. It provides some good deal of redundancy there in case you have a problem with one system.
All right, and Chris, do you copy me right now?
I sure do, Das. How's it going out there?
All right, not bad. I had some internet hiccups here on what I was using to listen to you, and so I lost you for a second. I apologize to the stream if I was talking over Chris for a second, but I could not hear what he was saying. I had to reconnect to a different modem so that I could actually hear. But what are we at with the countdown right now? How are we looking? What time?
We
How
are,
much time?
yeah, we are 17 minutes 54 seconds and counting.
All right, so I am going to need the camera to go offline for just a second as I swap out a battery. Are we good to lose, like go be right back, or go to another scene? Can we pipe in something else while I reset this battery? All right. So just expect me to be offline for just a second as I swap out some things here, okay?
Cool. So what we're now looking at is actually one of the cameras at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, camera 12, looking at the Antares rocket on the pad. A slightly different view. Das is looking at it where you're actually looking at the transporter erector, not the rocket. So this is a nice, like 90-degree different view.
And launch team, we're coming up on 17 minutes from T0.
Another good view. Just wanted to listen into the net there to see what they were saying. Oh, that's a gorgeous view.
LC system, step 381 complete. Copy that, system. Thanks for the report out on that.
Yeah, and one of the good things, going back to the question about why doesn't this launch on a Falcon 9 and the redundancy in the system, is Cygnus is actually designed to be launch vehicle agnostic. So it doesn't have to launch on the Antares rocket, and in fact when Antares had its failure, Cygnus kept launching on an Atlas V rocket. It launched twice on an Atlas V rocket before Antares came back online. And reflew. So Cygnus does have the capability to launch on other vehicles. And that was part of the overall design that Orbital and then Orbital ATK and now Northrop Grumman, because of how these companies acquire each other, built into the overall design of the spacecraft to begin with. So yeah, so you are looking there live at a nice, happy, venting Antares rocket. Nice and full of propellant. This is the 13th resupply mission to the International Space Station, the 12th flight of the Antares rocket. It's taking about 3,400 kilograms of supplies up to the space station, including fresh food for the crew, a whole host of scientific experiments. And this will actually also mark the second time that two Cygnus vehicles are in orbit at the same time.
Prop lead LC, can you give me status on 382?
Got some more
Yes,
status
LC,
checks
this
there.
is prop lead. F1N level is 11.
Copy that. And Core 1 LC, countdown 1. Core 1 LC, countdown 1.
Go ahead, LC. This is Core 1. Fuel adjustment is not required.
Copy that, Core 1. Prop 2, step 384. Configure OCCS for no adjustment to fuel level.
Didn't work.
and prop lead step 385 not required. CMD-LC, countdown 1. CMD, you go to transfer Cygnus to internal power, report when complete. In work.
So a lot of what you're hearing as they're working through these things and saying this step is not required, they build in steps in the countdown sequence so that if there's an anomaly, if there's something that they need to tweak with the rocket, they can do it, and they know at what point in the countdown they do it specifically. But a normal, if everything's functioning perfectly, they still have those discussions to verify, hey, do we need to do this? If the answer is no, then that step is not required, and that's what you're hearing, or we're hearing them talk about there.
I copied that. Ops 2 will go ahead and check, Prop 2 will go ahead and check 384 complete. Ops 2 LC, countdown 1.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and perform step Juliet 2, pre-burner low temperature abatement checklist again. You go for cycle 2, ME2 VPG activate.
ME2 VPG activated.
So as they continue working through these things, we have another question here from Pascal, who wanted to know that can the second stage be deorbited after it depletes its solid propellant?
It is National Pizza Day.
It cannot propulsively be deorbited, but because it's low enough at 283 by a 203 kilometer orbit, it's low enough that that even though it's out of most of the atmosphere, it's not completely out of the atmosphere. So there is a little bit of drag that continuously pulls that orbit lower and lower and lower, and it takes about 3 weeks for that stage to deorbit passively on its own. So it doesn't stay up there for a long time. It comes back in relatively quickly, just using regular atmospheric drag. And there's even atmospheric drag up at the International Space Station, which orbits at about 412 kilometers above Earth's sea level. And a couple times every year, we actually have to fire engines on the Soyuz spacecraft or the Progress spacecraft to reboost the International Space Station to account for that drag.
RSO's go. TD's go. Prop lead. Prop lead is go. Stage 1.
Stage 1 is go.
MES.
MES 1 is go.
GC.
GC is go.
ACE. ACE is go. Mars.
Mars is go.
CMD.
CMD is go.
LD.
LD is go.
NG.
In honor of Major Robert Lawrence, the first African-American astronaut who made the ultimate sacrifice in the name of the human exploration of space, and who showed that courage and inspiration know no color, Northrop Grumman is go.
And I copy that. NG. We'll go ahead and call go to proceed with final countdown, and we'll check 388 complete.
And what you were just listening to
Chris,
there was
we are
the
ready
final...
Chris, we're ready for the camera to come back online there. Sorry.
Cool.
Okay,
and yeah,
thanks.
so you're looking live at the camera that DOS has looking at Antares. What you were just listening to is the final go, no-go poll for liftoff. Everyone is go, and we are all go for launch at 17:39 and 30 seconds, coming up in about 11 minutes, 19 seconds from now. What I wanted to go over really quickly before we get into the real business end of the countdown here is that this will actually be the second time that two Cygnus vehicles are in orbit at the same time. So the NG-12 Cygnus, which launched back in November, departed the International Space Station on the 31st of January and released some CubeSats, and has now been in a loitering holding period in orbit as Northrop Grumman switched over to launch this mission. So once the NG-13 flight gets to the International Space Station on Tuesday, Northrop will then switch back over primarily to commanding the NG-12 vehicle in orbit, finish out its mission, and bring it down later this month for a destructive re-entry over the South Pacific Ocean. That's the second time.
Step 386, Cygnus is on internal power nominal.
That's the second time this type of overlap has happened, and it's part of Northrop Grumman's overall plan to offer Cygnus as a free-flying science platform, so that after it does its primary 3-month station resupply mission, it can be released from the station and stay in orbit for up to a year for government or commercial payloads testing operations that maybe they don't need the International Space Station to do that, or they don't want to be on the International Space Station to do those experiments, and they can do them on Cygnus after it leaves the space station. So all part of Northrop Grumman's grand plan to offer Cygnus and to make Cygnus more than just a station cargo vehicle. And in fact, some of the experiments that are on board, there's a fire in space experiment on board this Cygnus that after it's done with its mission to the station in April or May, they'll actually start a controlled fire inside of the spacecraft and test various ways to put that fire out and how various spaceflight materials react to fire in space, because that's the big thing we really don't want and fear in spaceflight is a fire on our space station.
Step 392, you go to enable ACS VDMs.
And we also heard there earlier that Cygnus is on internal power.
Voltage nominal, ODM commands are clear. Roger that, Elect 1, we'll check 393.
So Das, I want to throw it back to you real quick. We're 8 minutes 40 seconds away from liftoff here from the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport in Wallops, Virginia. How's it looking on your end? I mean, it looks like it's a gorgeous sky behind that rocket.
Chris, it's gorgeous, but my hands are a little bit too frozen to actually accurately manipulate the equipment. So I'm trying to plug in stuff, and I've been out here for an hour and a half now. The sun is down officially, my hands are frozen officially, and I have a feeling that when I'm tracking this rocket, it may be a little bit shaky because I am shaky. I am cold out here today, I tell you that much. But
as someone
everything
who
looks like it's working fine.
I was going to say, I sympathize as someone who also has to track rockets with cameras.
Control GN2 conditioning.
All right, but everything looks like it's tracking pretty well so far here. So we're just standing by. What do we say? 8 minutes?
7 minutes 45 seconds and counting.
Nice.
So yeah, we have a happy rocket. Hopefully this is the first of 2 launches from the east coast of the United States today. This Cygnus mission on Antares going in 7.5 minutes. And then 5.5 hours later at 11:03 p.m. Eastern or 4:03 UTC, we should have the launch of the Atlas V rocket with the European Space Agency's Solar Orbiter mission to study the Sun and give us the first ever views of the Sun's poles.
Go ahead, MES1. We're going to end the abatement purge on ME2. Copy that. Ops 2, step Juliet 2, pre-burner low temperature abatement. You go to deactivate ME2 VPG.
But let's but Das, I'm going to stop talking a lot so we can listen in, and we'll just like kind of clarify any comments that come in. I'll clarify any comments that come in over the net unless there's something else that you really want to talk about here. We're 6.5 minutes away from liftoff now.
I'm just making sure that everything's ready. I'm doing manual focus. I'm making sure that I'm not doing automatic focus or anything like that on the cameras. I'm ready to just start tracking this thing, Chris.
Properly. Check 395.
Cool. Then let's listen into the business end of the countdown. We'll clarify anything that needs to be clarified, but let's go ahead and listen into what the controllers are saying.
Ground ordnance power supplies initialized.
LC Elect 1, ground ordnance power supplies nominal.
Roger, Elect 1, check 396, 397. T-minus 6 minutes and counting.
We just got 6 minutes and counting there was the last number I just heard. I like it.
LC Site Control, FA ECS transfer to GN2 confirmed.
Roger that, Site Control. We'll check 398 complete.
All right. Got manual focus recording on the main camera. Got manual focus recording on the second camera. This camera, I just turned it on and it just works.
Launch team, we're going to hold at T-minus 5 minutes. TD, we're going to hold at T-minus 5 minutes. Admin, we're going to hold at T-minus 5 minutes.
So there has been a hold called in the count. We are going to hold at T-minus 5 minutes. There is a 5-minute launch window, so they only have 5 minutes to hold at this point.
Right.
LCA, this is admin on countdown 2.
Go admin.
I have a resume time of 22 hours, 39 minutes, and 29 seconds.
That's a good copy, yes.
So they are going to resume the count at 5:39 and 20. I think I heard 20 seconds, which is so basically they're going to hold until about 10 seconds before our original launch time.
You're going to do it on countdown 1.
And prop 2, prop lead on countdown 1.
Prop 2, go ahead.
Place OCCS in auto mode and pause the HP.
HPGN2, off sequence, pause 5047.
And prop 2, close valve 5047.
Closing on my mark, 2, 1, mark. .5047 closed.
We do not know if they have resumed the countdown yet.
Copy, hold on.
Yeah, they're going to resume the countdown. They said at 5:39 and 20 seconds.
What does that give us for a T-minus right now?
So that would result in a liftoff time of 5:44 and 20 seconds.
Please close 5079.
How much?
Hang on, let's listen to them, Das, real quick.
Copy that in prop 2. Command valve 5079 to close.
In work.
And be advised, we have just under 3 minutes remaining.
So they have under 3 minutes of hold time remaining.
5079 closed.
And prop 2, open valve 5047.
In work.
So we are still holding.
5047 opened.
Basically what it sounds like is that they are now targeting within seconds of the end of the launch window today.
Wilco. And prop 2, resume auto sequence control of the HPGN2.
Auto sequence resumed.
And return OCCS to auto control mode.
OCCS returned to auto control mode.
Launch team LC, countdown 1, be advised, we'll be resuming our countdown at 22:39:29 Zulu. We have a new targeted T0 of 22:40:59. That's 22:40:59 Zulu. We're currently complete all steps 390 through step 398. As we resume the countdown, we'll go ahead and initiate engine priming and get ready to transfer avionics to internal power.
So they said that the new launch time will be 17:40 and 59 seconds, but they had held at 5 minutes, and that's a little confusing. But anyway, the new T0 time they said is 17:40 and 59 seconds.
Excuse me, targeted T0 will be 22:44:29.
There we go. They just corrected it. So the targeted T0 time
Zulu.
is 17:44 and 59 seconds. Which is basically the end of the window.
And we're less than 1 minute from resuming our countdown.
There we go, less than a minute to go to resume. I did not hear what the issue was that caused the hold, but it could not have been overly serious because they knew pretty instantly what their new T0 time would be and what the pickup time would be. But we're going to pick up the count here in about 20 seconds and count down from T-5 to a new launch time of 17:44 and 59 seconds, which is basically the end of today's launch window. So no more ability to hold at this point. Any additional hold would result in a scrub and a scrub turnaround because we would run out of window in which to launch to rendezvous with the International Space Station. But standing by to pick up the count.
Launch team, our countdown has resumed. Ops 2, step
And
399.
the countdown has
initiate
resumed.
engine priming.
Well, that's good.
Engine priming.
Yes, and they are in engine priming, so that's good. Let's hope there are
Copy,
no
engine
other
priming
issues.
started. Ops 1, transfer avionics to internal
So
power.
we should be about 4
LC
minutes
Ops 1,
50,
avionics internal
4
power
minutes
on.
45 seconds
Standby
and
for
counting
ignition.
at this point.
LC Ops 1, external power off.
Copy that, Ops 1.
LC Elect 1, internal power is nominal.
Roger that, Elect 1, check 401. Ops 1, you go to open FTS Umbiloop and verify green indication.
LC Ops 1, FTS Umbiloop open and green.
LC Elect 2, FTLU and FTS receiver indications are nominal.
Copy, Elect 2, we'll check 402 and 403. Ops 1, you go
So we
to
are
send all
4
armed
minutes
command.
15 seconds away from liftoff.
LC Ops 1, all armed command sent.
Copy, Ops 1, check 404 complete.
LC Elect 1, SNAs, ODMs all armed.
Copy, Elect 1, check 405. TD, report range status.
Range is green.
Copy, range green, check 406.
LC MES 1, priming verified.
Roger that, priming verified, check 407 complete.
And T-minus 4 minutes and counting.
Whew.
Ready, DOS?
Launch team, be
I'm trying to
advised,
warm up,
phase 3
Chris.
dynamic limits,
I'm trying to warm up.
will be active at T-minus
Hey, these
3
last
minutes.
minute holds provide some awesome drama and you know, like upset stomachs, right?
FC commanded to flight mode.
I mean, it's so nice out here, though. It's so very nice out here.
And it should be a gorgeous launch now.
Power
About
sequence start.
oh, what about 10 minutes after
ODM
local
bus voltages
sunset
and
there?
currents are
Should be
nominal.
gorgeous.
Copy all, Elect
Yeah.
1. GNC 1, step 413, verify ready for nav mode. Corp nav ready for nav. And Ops 2, step 414, switch to nav.
Orb nav, switch to nav.
Copy that, Ops 2, check 414 complete.
LC, this is prop lead. Abort.
Oh, and we have an
Copy
abort.
that,
We got
Prophet,
abort,
this is
abort,
LC
abort.
on countdown 1. We have an abort. We have an abort on countdown 1. Launch team, we have an abort. Time to proceed to abort safing countdown, or checklist.
So that is it for today for Antares and Cygnus. Unfortunately, that means we will not have a double header off the East Coast, but we came very close. But unfortunately, with an abort called in our countdown, we do not have any more window in which to launch and rendezvous at the International
Ops 1,
Space Station.
LC, countdown 1, step Alpha 2, disable your local launch enable button at the failsafe panel. Verify local indicators extinguished.
LC Ops 1, launch enable removed.
It is also
NTSO
worth noting
step
that all
Alpha 3,
scrubs are
disable your
always
local launch enable
disappointing. This
button
is a
failsafe
rare
panel.
scrub
Verify local
for
indicators.
a rare technical scrub for the Antares rocket.
GSO launch enable removed.
Ops 1, verify removal of your master global launch enable.
Chris, did we hear
LC Ops 1,
who it was that called the
removal
abort?
of Master global launch enable verified.
I did not know. I did not hear who called the abort or what the
Arm
reason
enable
was.
Gotcha.
No one on the
LC Ops
team
1,
caught it
arm
either,
enable
so
key
it doesn't
rotated
appear that
and
they
arm
said it
enable
yet
no
over
longer
the net.
illuminated.
Right.
And MES1, step Alpha 6, I believe we can verify that priming had completed.
I know we have the launch net in the background there, but our chances for tomorrow aren't looking too good. What was the latest weather for tomorrow, Chris?
For MES1.
MES1
Thomas,
was
I think
at
they said
step
weather was
Alpha 6 of the
80%
abort chasing
no-go
operations.
for tomorrow and
for a
on
report on
Tuesday as
engine
well.
priming status.
Yes, so
Was their
priming
weather
was
out
completed,
brief
but the fuel
a
limit
few
valve
hours
is not.
ago. So weather does not look like it's going to cooperate
Okay,
for
copy
Monday
that.
or
So
Tuesday.
step
And of course, we
Alpha
don't know what the
7,
problem is
will or
yet,
will
so
not
we
be
can't
required.
really say
Alpha 7
how much
is
weather
not
will be a
required.
factor, because if it was a technical
Roger
issue, they
that,
might not be able to fix
roger
it
that,
in time for tomorrow. Or
And,
Tuesday, so we'll
Ops
need
1,
to see
step Alpha 8,
what they said. But what you're
West
hearing
Main,
on the countdown net is the
and
standard
enable
back
ground
out
ODMs
of the
and verify ODMs.
countdown sequence and the safing
Okay,
of
Ops
the
1 on
rocket
board.
because it was in terminal count sequence. So that's what you're hearing in the background chatter there. But you know, it is really worth noting for the 5,400 of you still watching that this is a very, very rare technical scrub for
LC Ops 1,
the
vehicle
Antares.
safe and arms, and vehicle and ground ODM safe.
Copy that, Ops 1. Check Alpha 8 complete.
Airlock 1 confirms stage 2 ignition. Aura SNAs are safe. Flight computer ODM safe. Stage
So the
controller,
gigantic
ODM
white
safe.
cloud you are seeing is
Ground
not coming
ODM
from the
safe.
rocket, even though it makes it look like it is right there. That is actually the
Alpha 10. Reset your ground ODM power supply.
that is actually gaseous oxygen being vented from the oxygen propellant tank on the ground. That's used to store the propellant before it is loaded, or the oxidizer before it is loaded into the rocket. So that's not actually coming from the rocket on this view.
FTSA and FTSB SNA safe indication.
Roger, Elect 1. Site control, step Alpha 12. Reestablish your aft bay airflow and remove the aft bay GN2 and verify ECS parameters.
And in work.
And I copy in work. TLMLC, countdown 1, step Alpha 14.
So as we're doing it, I just wanted to say that the reason definitively has not been stated for the scrub over the ComNet. That was just confirmed by NASA Public Affairs on a NASA TV broadcast.
Yeah, direct needs no way to restart their MS session or report when complete.
And work.
Yeah, and Chris,
And
here
system LC, countdown 1.
people haven't cleared the line quite yet, so
Yes,
I'm going to
this is
just keep my
Alpha
camera
17,
live here
coordinate
as long as I
4142,
can until I see everybody starting to move out, okay?
That sounds good. And actually, that angle is great because you can see the gaseous oxygen venting, and you can clearly see in this angle that it's not from the rocket, even though the previous angle we were looking at DOS from one of the Wallops cameras made it look like the rocket was like furiously venting liquid oxygen or gaseous oxygen there.
Alpha 18 is not required for today's operation.
But you know, well, DOS, actually, this is a great point to take we still have 4,600 people watching this. Thank you so much for sticking with us. We're going to stick with it for as long as we can. Hopefully we can hear what the issue
Yes, I control. Sorry, you got stepped on there. Can I get that again?
That caused our scrub today. But DOS, I mean, this is something that you and I live with all the time, right? That, you know, you can get really close, but nothing's definitive for liftoff until the rocket literally starts rising off the launch pad. But it is disappointed. What are you feeling right now? You know.
Yeah. It's par for the course. I mean, what we like to say is you'd rather be on the ground wishing you were flying than being flying wishing you were on the ground. So whatever it is that caused them to call that abort, they know what they're doing. It takes years to get missions like this ready, the science that's on board, everything that it's taken up. So it's not like I just push it anyways. If something goes wrong, we'll launch a different one tomorrow. You would rather let it wait a day or 48 hours, 24 hours, a week, whatever, than jeopardize the mission. So here, I'm sure we'll get more information. Listening. They're just continuing to work the list, it sounds like, but we'd rather be on the ground wishing we were flying, right?
Most definitely, yeah. And they're continuing to work through their safing process after the scrub. So everything that they activated and armed and did everything for launch, they now have to go very methodically back.
And if you could use anomaly 1. All right, copy that. LC in work. TLMLC, countdown 1, step Alpha 20. You can place it.
So they're going to go off and discuss on Anomaly Net 1 what caused our scrub today. So hopefully we can get an answer for you.
TLC set to detanking.
Roger. And Core 2 LC, countdown 1.
But it was the propellant lead console operator that called the abort. So it seems like it had something to do with the propellant, the oxidizer, or something.
Copy that. We'll check Alpha 20 complete.
Oh, and Michael Baylor is just telling us that it was a ground support equipment failure or issue. So it doesn't appear that it was anything to do with Antares itself, but something on the ground, which bodes well for Antares' reputation.
Transfer of FTS to external power. This is step.
But we'll have to wait and see exactly what that issue was and what the
FSO
and what the fix is.
FSO go. Okay, we're going to take FTS over to external power.
And Chris, I'm going to try a trick right quick here. I've actually been running 2 cameras, so you may see a blip.
LC Ops 1, FTSA,
that's right. So the other, so I know a lot of you are asking in chat when the next launch opportunity is. we can definitively say they are not launching today because the window to launch to the International Space Station today from Wallops closed about 5 minutes ago. So there is no ability to launch today. We do not know when the next attempt will be made, because they need to figure out exactly what caused the scrub and the abort of our launch today, before they can determine a path forward of how to fix the issue and when they can be ready to go again. Another thing that will factor into this is what type of late load cargo NASA has on this mission that was loaded just 24 hours ago, and whether that late load cargo is good for an attempt tomorrow or Tuesday if Northrop Grumman can fix the issue very quickly with the ground support equipment, or if that late load needs to be pulled and swapped out with new late load items. Sometimes when there are animals like mice going up to the space station, they have very strict timelines for how long the mice can be on board the spacecraft before it launches, and they'd have to go in and swap the mice out. Yeah, hey Das, how's it going? I sure can, Das, yeah. We sure do, yes. There we go. Ah. Oh, okay. So what you're looking at here is, if you couldn't hear that, is DAS was using the P1000, and this is that P1000. So this is one of the cameras he was operating to try to get really tight in tracking shots of the rocket after it left the launch pad, and he was actually able to switch over cameras to show us how this P1000 can really zoom into the rocket as it's on the pad there. So that's why we had the momentary black screen as DAS switched over cameras. And DAS, since you can hear me, we can actually see all of the graphics there as you zoom in and zoom out and play with it. Yeah. But that's because he was recording in 4K. Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, and what we're hearing in the background is the teams continuing to work through the safing systems and safing requirements as they back Antares out of its countdown to get it into a position or into a configuration where they can safely begin detanking the first stage and getting that RP1 kerosene and liquid oxygen out of the first stage. But they won't do that until the rocket is completely safe. But yes, there is still another rocket that is scheduled to launch today. The Atlas V rocket is scheduled to launch at 23:03 Eastern, 4:03 UTC from Space Launch Complex 41 here at the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, where I am. The image you are looking at is brought to you by DAS, who is at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport in Virginia. But the Atlas is scheduled to go in about 5 hours, 10 minutes from now. And yeah. Yeah. Yep. So, and that's going to do it for this particular broadcast. And that's a great visual of where DAS is in Virginia, where I am in Florida for Solar Orbiter. But that is going to do it for our broadcast here today, as DAS is going to be packing up and moving back onto the bus. So for all of us, from all of us at NASASpaceflight, thank you so much for watching our feed. We super appreciate it. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to our channel and make sure you activate notifications. We promise we do not spam you with anything that is not super cool rocket stuff. like our attempted launch of Antares here. But you can join us for our live stream and broadcast of the Atlas launch later this evening. That launch broadcast will start at 9:45 p.m. Eastern, 2:45 UTC, live from the Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida. So do join us at 9:45 Eastern, 2:45 UTC for our next live stream of the launch of Atlas V with the European Space Agency's Solar Orbiter. Until then, I'm Chris Gebhardt with NASA Spaceflight. Please go on over to NASASpaceflight.com, read all about this Antares mission, and in about an hour we will have our launch article for the Solar Orbiter mission published, where you can read all about that awesome mission as well. Until then, thank you all for joining us. Have a great evening. Grab some dinner, grab some breakfast, grab some lunch, depending on where you are around the world, and come back in a couple hours to join us for Atlas V and Solar Orbiter.